So it says 80% of men are no longer interested in dating. They are not even trying. Why is this the case? So we're going to look at what these men here have to say. But before we look at their opinion, let me tell you mine. Because I'm the star of the show tonight. But I've been thinking about this. I've been thinking about why is dating why does it seem like dating isn't worth it? Now, dating is really hard when you're an average dude because women have such high expectations and they have so many options that when you're average, you just don't really have a lot to work with, in terms of like convincing a woman that you're worth being with. And I feel like what kind of throws off this conversation is that, of course, yeah, you can find average guys in relationships. You can find ugly guys, broke guys in relationships. But that doesn't mean that there isn't a problem. Like, one, when you see that, you don't know the dynamics of that relationship. Yeah, he might have her, but who has control in that relationship? Like, you only see the guy with the girl, but you don't know what's actually going on in that house. It's kind of like in the book by Esther Villar, The Manipulated Man. She talks about this a little bit, and she says, when a man sees a couple, when you see a man with maybe an attractive woman, you shouldn't feel envy, because you don't know that within that relationship, that woman probably has a lot of power over that man. He probably had to give up an immense amount of, his own personal autonomy and goals, preferences just to maintain that relationship. And I've seen that even with my own friend, right? Where, your friend gets a cute girlfriend and you're kind of envious, but then you see the ins and outs of the relationship and the cost of it. And it's like, wait a minute. He had to. It's essentially a lot of guys that you see in relationships, like they're slaving, bro. They're slaving to keep that girl satisfied. They can't talk the way they want to talk. They can't walk the way they want to walk or wear what they want to wear. Like everything they do, or damn near close to it, has to be aligned with what that girl wants, or she's gonna trade them in for something else. And so as I look at it from my perspective, when I look at dating and why I don't try is because it really just feels hopeless. When I see a girl and I know just one, the expectations that she's going to have in terms of the amount of money she's going to expect me to make, height, penis size, the way I dress, the way I look, behavior wise, all those types of things. And then on top of that, just all the options that she has. I think that a lot of men just feel a sense of hopelessness because we don't really have any leverage when it comes to dating. Girls have so many options. It's just like, why should she choose you over anybody else? Without a doubt, damn near any attractive girl, even decent looking girl, like if you're an average guy, and I gotta reiterate on that, because if you're exceptional, above average or something, then this doesn't really apply to you. But if you're an average, unremarkable guy, then yeah, like why should any decent looking woman choose you over anybody else? Now that doesn't mean that it can't happen or it won't happen. It happens every day. But just from the perspective of you're the average guy looking at a woman that you want, if I had to put a number on it, it's like the odds or like the balance of power and leverage between the two of you is like 1 to 100, if not worse than that. Because you need her a lot more than she needs you, or you want her a lot more than she wants you. That's why so many of the dynamics of dating are the way that they are. That's why most men have to do the approaching. That's why most men have to make the first move, because she don't need you. She barely notice you. She don't want you. You got to tap dance and show off for her and prove yourself to her. You already know you like her. But to her, you're just another one of the, masses of average men that she could easily get on any day of the week. And so for me, that's basically how I feel. I feel like dating with no leverage is terrible. You have no power. You have no negotiating power as an average man when it comes to dating. Like everything you do, like you got to brute force it. It's all about brute force, asking out 100 women, 500 women, 1,000 women, settling for fat girls, single moms, crazy bitches. You got nothing. Like it's just you're really in a state of desperation because you have such little value in comparison to the person that you want to be with, And so from that perspective, what can you do? You either just don't play the game, you opt out of the game like I've done, or you say I'm going to self improve to make the odds a little bit better, right? And then some guys, they just say, fuck it, I'm going to brute force it. I'll ask out 100 women and then 500 women and all that. I'll settle for a bipolar bitch or a girl with kids. And, so it just depends on like how you decide to go about it. But that's my perspective on it. It just seems hopeless because, guys like myself, we don't have any real value on the dating market. We are completely expendable, unnecessary, nobodies, right? At least in terms of dating. I don't mean to say that to try to put myself down. I love myself. I think I'm awesome. But, when you talk about like different aspects of life, your value fluctuates. I love my life. I love myself in terms of just living my life. But if I try to take my black ass to a basketball court, I don't have any value because I don't know how to play basketball. I'm not very tall. I barely played. I don't even play fucking 2K, right? So you can have value, but go to a situation where you don't have value, right? Like staying on the sports comparison, LeBron James has immense value as a basketball player, but not a lot if he tried to play football, especially at his age. Or like when Michael Jordan retired from basketball and went to baseball, he didn't have a lot of value in baseball because he wasn't that good. So I don't say this to try to put guys down or put myself down, but in the world of dating and love and relationships, some of us we just don't have it. Shit, most men don't have it. Most men are just barely scraping by, and that's the truth. But let's see what these guys have to say. So this guy says simple, the game is rigged, the rewards are weak, and the cost is too damn high. Harsh modern truths. No respect for masculinity. Men are demonized for being men, yet expected to provide, protect, and perform on command. I agree with that. I think one thing that I've noticed about women nowadays is that they want men to do those traditional things, like he said, provide, protect, perform, but they don't really want men to be actual leaders. And I think that's part of the problem. They don't really respect men as leaders. It's like they like men as utilities, but they don't want to actually be submissive to a man. They don't want to actually have to follow a man's lead. And I get that to a certain extent. I think people don't really give women enough credit for what that means to, submit to somebody and their leadership because, you kind of giving up your own power in that situation. So I get it to a certain extent, but this is part of the reason why we have these problems. High investment, low return. Work 60 plus hours, build yourself up only to be an option while she explores her self love phase. So this kind of reminds me of that meme that shows like all the things that men have to do to be attractive. And then you look at the women's side and they just have to not be fat. Right. And then on top of that, you got a lot of women that they're offended by the idea of a man expecting them to cook and clean and do traditionally feminine things, or things that would be expected of a woman. They get offended when guys want that sometimes. So kind of in line with the low return aspect of it. You know, these days, depending on the girl clearly, but you're not gonna get as much out of her as she's gonna get out of you, because a lot of them, they don't even want to do like basic stuff anymore. No traditional femininity. Women demand high value men while offering attitude, independence, and OnlyFans subscriptions. Four, legal and financial risks. One wrong choice and you're paying alimony, child support, or facing false accusations with zero consequences for her. That's true too. Now, to a certain extent, you know, this is about accountability for men. Like when you see guys going out here getting girls pregnant and things like that. But just knowing that that's one of the risks that you take when it comes to dating, I think that's why more guys are just hanging back and not trying to date as much, because that's one of the things that's kind of deterring us. Especially like, you know, marriage, that's the obvious one. You know, you step into marriage, then you're always lined up for a divorce at any given time. And then, you know, if you get a girl pregnant, child support, and then, you know, false accusations. I think that's something that, I don't know, like, now the false accusations thing, that's something I really want to research, because I always think about that in terms of like celebrities, but I wonder how often does that happen to average guys, you know? Endless validation culture, social media keeps her addicted to attention. Why settle when 100 thirsty simps are in her DMs? And that's what I was talking about earlier. That's the options thing. Like girls just have so many options, and I just think when you have that many options, you don't value the individual efforts of a guy that's trying to court you as much, because you know you have the same thing right around the corner. You know, so you're going to be looking for the best. And again, it's a logical thing. I'm not saying this like this is a bad thing that women are doing. I just think like this is what makes dating less appealing to guys, is that knowing that you gotta contend with, as he said, 100 thirsty simps in her DMs. And you would think that it's just the pretty girls who are dealing with this. But I told you guys, you know, that girl that I met at the gym, she was not very attractive. And she was telling me about, you know, the guys in the gym that have hit on her and stuff like that. The amount of attention that she gets, basically, my lord. And I felt like she was like a four at best, right? And damn. So imagine you want a girl that's actually like really like decent looking, or you know, like a five or a six. The rise of entitlement. They want a king but refuse to be a queen. Submission is oppression, yet provision is expected. Damn. I like the way he worded that, but that's kind of similar to one of the previous ones. The death of loyalty. Cheating is empowerment. Divorce is self-care. And good men are discarded when they're no longer exciting. Yeah, as Chris Brown said, these hoes ain't loyal. Men aren't quitting dating, they're quitting the circus. Until the system respects them again, they'll invest in money, muscle, and mastery, not modern relationships. You know, that's funny because I think back to that video I made where I said, you know, what's most important. And I guess I can only say that in terms of what's most important to me. But I said self mastery as being the most important thing to me. And it's just kind of interesting that he listed that in there. Money, muscle, mastery. I think, and you look at, that's really the path that a lot of men are taking. You know, you have a lot of guys out there, you know, they're putting all their focus in making money. I want to make 100K a year, 500K a year. I want to be a millionaire. Muscle, you see everybody going to the gym, working out hard, you know? Check out the guns. And mastery, you know, trying to master a skill, master yourself, self-discipline, pushing yourself. I think that's more so the path that I've taken, you know, fitness and self-mastery. I'm just now getting on my money shit. But yeah, I think men are just kind of turning inward because we don't really see women in relationships as being like a good investment. It's too volatile. too volatile, too unpredictable, too competitive, oversaturated, and so much of it, has to do with your God given your God given ability, your genetics. If some guys you ain't got that, so you got to try to compensate in other ways, and that of course makes the game a lot harder. Quick story. There's this girl that works in the Dollar Tree around here, and she's a cute brown skinned short girl, and she got a nice butt. Definitely my type, but she just has like this stuck up aura about her. I'm not saying she's stuck up, but I just always get that vibe from her. Like she's I don't want to call her stuck up, but I get a stuck up vibe about her. I'll just put it like that. And she just seems so cold, to be honest. But I remember one day I went in there and there was like this tall guy standing by her cash register. And I don't know if that was her boyfriend or a guy that she was just talking to or whatever, but her energy was like completely different, bro. And I was like, I don't know. It was just one of those moments where you see what it takes to get the girl. You see the difference between yourself and the guys that girls actually want. Whenever I would see her in there, she was always completely cold to me. Like, no, like, not even like the basic, I'ma just be nice because I'm working in a store where customer service is my job. Like, I mean, she's so cold. But when that tall dude was standing by her cash register, and like her energy was completely different, bro. But again, like that's one of the reasons why I've checked out of the dating game long ago, because I already saw the game for what it was, man. Like some guys just have it and some guys don't. And so this might be a girl's says it's because women aren't dating anymore, so y'all have no choice, y'all. Most of you have failed to adapt and treat women better. We no longer need men, so we won't tolerate the BS we used to. Now that we can care for ourselves, we also don't feel marriage validates us or even want kids. It's because women aren't dating anymore, so y'all have no. Now, that part of her post, I don't agree with. This idea, like, women are not sitting around not fucking. Now, when she says that, maybe she means women aren't dating in terms of like a serious relationship. But trust me, young, attractive women are not just sitting at home eating ice cream or even going to work and making like these girls are fucking. They all fucking. They might not be fucking with the intent to date. They could be out here fucking just for fun. I'll give her that. But let's not act like women are just out here like going MGTOW. That's crazy. There is some truth to what she's saying here, though. So most of you have failed to adapt and treat women better. Now, not the last part. It ain't got nothing to do with treating women better. But I will say that I think that men have failed. A lot of men have failed to adapt. Some of us, admittedly, don't want to adapt too. Got to throw that in there. But one thing that I see, like now, Coach Greg Adams, he's always talking about what he calls the monetized dating market. And, he's a self-admitted trick and he feels no shame about being a trick because he feels like today's dating market is all about money. Is whether you're talking about girlfriends, wives, casual dating, straight up tricking, prostitutes, all that, OnlyFans, sugar baby, sugar daddy. He feels like on every level, it's about money. And I think there's a lot of truth to what he says there. And that's where I feel like failure to adapt comes into play. I think a lot of guys still think that, especially average guys, if you're again, if you don't have the genetic advantage, Lord, Lord bless your soul. But if you don't have any sort of like genetic advantage and you're not trying to play the money game or be a trick, and I'm not saying you gotta be a straight up trick, but I do think that in our era of dating, money has become much, much more important. And I think the acquisition of resources and the willingness to use those resources to attract women, I think that is the number one adaptation that men have to make in order to get the most out of the modern dating market. And I think that's I think that's a lot of what it comes down to. It's like this whole idea of just making a Tinder profile, a Bumble profile, and swiping. No. And even those apps are more and more becoming like pay to win, where you pay to be more visible. You pay for more likes and more swipes. You pay to be able to see who likes you, the fat girls who like you, right? So on every level, dating is becoming more and more monetized. And I got to give CGA a lot of credit for kind of being ahead of the game in terms of like recognizing that as being one of the most important aspects of modern dating. Just being willing to invest money and use money and resources like to get women. I mean, unfortunately, that's kind of where we are. Um, but then she says we no longer need men for a lot of them. That yeah, I mean, in terms of like money and resources, they can make their own money. And that's part of why being average just doesn't really work anymore. Like I got a job now, but I'm not making enough to really impress any girls. So this guy says dating hasn't become harder, dudes have become weaker. They want to make the rules instead of playing the game, something their forefathers understood well. I think both are true, to be honest. I think dating has undeniably become harder. But to be fair, our generation of men have also become weaker. I mean, we can't deny that. A lot of us being raised by single mothers. It's kind of like that old saying: "Hard times create strong men create good times create weak men." It's that whole cycle. And just being real, I think we are the weak man generation. Where um, even myself, it's taking me a lot longer than what would should have been normal to really find my sense of masculinity and purpose in the world. For me, it started with getting into working out, and then I started like putting myself more out there socially. Learning how to drive, getting my first job, and you know, self reflection, self development, all that shit. But shit, man, a lot of the things that I've done in like 1950 or 60, teenagers would have done 10 times that. Right? So just being real, we are a generation of weaker men, and that is going to make you less attractive to women, obviously. But to say that dating hasn't gotten harder, I think that's also blatantly wrong. When you look at things like the invention of social media and how that greatly expanded women's options, and not just dating getting harder, but I think also it's harder because the quality of women has gone down as well. Because you can't just talk about how men have gotten weaker and not address the changes in women as well. Yeah, us men, we've gotten worse, but women have gotten worse too. Women are more masculine and not in a good way, more argumentative, more combative, more rebellious. They don't want to submit. They don't want to be team players. with the men that they would get with. They choose evil men. They choose to be with gangsters and thugs and bad boys over guys who would be, good fathers or good parents or a good husband. So it's definitely two sides to this. And then he says they want to make the rules instead of playing the game, something their forefathers understood well. Now, the thing about that is that when the game changes in such a way to where the risk reward is no longer appealing, then of course guys aren't gonna want to play the game. Like this whole idea of just playing the game no matter what, I think that's foolish. Because what ends up happening then is that no matter how much the rules change to make the game not in your favor, to make the game more and more unfair, to make the game more brutal, less rewarding, more demanding, people expect you to just keep playing. And for a lot of us, we're just not going to do that. At the end of the day, we want to be happy. At the end of the day, we want to enjoy our lives. And we're not going to play a game that's going to get in the way of us being happy and enjoying our lives. And I think that's the problem, is that the game has gotten so bad to where we know, or at least believe, that it's going to not improve our lives, but lower our quality of life. Just playing the game to play it, without any consideration for the risk and reward. Again, that's just foolish.